American patriots, are you a supporter of the Second Amendment? Are you a responsible gun owner? If so, then you know the day will come that you're going to need a trusted and qualified gunsmith. When that day arrives, I want you to contact the man that I trust with my weapons, Mr. Delaney Jackson, owner of Jumpin, a gunsmith and appraisal. Besides being a professional gunsmith, Delaney is a true American patriot. And, a little trivia for you, he's also the manager and guitar player for country music legend Mr. Mark Chestnut. So when the time arrives, take your weapons to the man who treats my weapons like they're his own, my trusted friend, Mr. Delaney Jackson at Jumpin' Jack's Gunsmith and Appraisal. Contact information and website information is in the description of this video below. Thank you and God bless.
I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. Say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, American patriots, and welcome to another episode of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight, but you chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Earlier this morning, I made a post on my community section here, as well as on other social media sites that I belong to, and 99.9% of everyone agreed with what I had to say, especially those that are military veterans or served during the Cold War. But then there's a few clueless, brain-dead zombies saying that I have lost all touch with reality. So that was it. About 2 o'clock this morning, 1:50 actually to be exact. What did I say? I said, American patriots, it's 1:50 a.m. and I can't sleep because of what's going through my mind. As a 4-time combat veteran who also served during the Cold War and trained to fight the Russians, it is my personal belief that we are closer to a nuclear war than at any time in our history. I'm talking about a full-blown Armageddon, earth-shattering event. I pray that I'm 100% wrong. But I communicate often with friends and family that work in places that are way above my pay grade. And what they are saying to me is very scary. Moral of my thoughts: pray for Russian military leaders to turn on their commander-in-chief and get right with God as soon as possible. I stand behind that statement tonight 100%, because someone who's been there, done that, and is very familiar with the way Russia operates, the things that are coming out of the Kremlin are outright frightening. And we need to take heed to that. We need to take notice. We need to pay attention. Because if we don't, it's going to bite us in the ass. And that is one of my biggest fears. The former press secretary to the Ukrainian president isn't holding back when it comes to her feeling of American Vice President Kamala Harris, who's over there in different parts of Europe trying to, I don't know what the hell she's trying to do. Besides being a laughing hyena, I don't know. I don't know why Joe sent her over there. Been trying to figure it out. Can't do it. Same thing with our southern border when he made her the border czar and said, fix it. The woman hasn't even met with the people that run the border, our border patrol. They're trying to stop sex trafficking and the drugs and the MS-13 gang members. And she's just clueless. And she's way over her head with Russia and their invasion of Ukraine. Anyhow, the former press secretary to the Ukrainian president isn't holding back. She said it would be a tragedy if this woman ever became the president of the United States. Her name is Lilian Mendel, and she wrote that on Twitter following Harris's press conference today alongside the Polish president addressing the ongoing Russian invasion in Ukraine. Her tweet was directed at a video posted by another user showing Harris awkwardly laughing following a question from a reporter about Ukrainian refugees. And that video is all over the internet. It's here on YouTube if you want to go check it out and see for yourself. In the video, Harris and the Poland president appear confused about who would answer the reporter's question, leading to Harris laughing while saying, "A friend in need is a friend indeed." The Polish president then offered to respond first and began speaking. Harris was ripped by critics following the exchange, accusing her of looking to him for help answering the question and slamming her for laughing aimed at the suffering of the Ukrainians at the hands of the Russian military. Harris traveled to Poland yesterday to reinforce that the U.S. is standing firm with its NATO allies, as well as in a show of support of the alliance eastern flank aimed at the Russian aggression towards Ukraine. Kamala Harris. Let's all pray that she doesn't ever get any closer than she already is at being a leader in this country. Throughout the day, throughout yesterday, the House yesterday approved a $1.5 trillion spending bill to keep the government's doors open for the next 6 months, as well as send $13.6 billion in humanitarian aid and military aid to Ukraine. The bill includes more than $4 billion to assist Ukraine and others in Eastern Europe grappling with the millions of refugees fleeing the former Soviet Republic after Russia invaded 2 weeks ago. Nearly $7 billion would backfill the transfer of U.S. military equipment to Ukraine and its allies, as well as cover the current and future deployment of American troops and equipment to defend NATO in the region. Joe Biden has said he would not send troops to Ukraine. We're becoming witness to one of the worst humanitarian crises we have seen in generations, which is why this bill provides $13.6 billion in humanitarian assistance, defense support, and economic aid to help the Ukrainian people in their most desperate hour of need, said House Appropriations Chairperson Rosa DeLauro, Democrat, Connecticut. The bill was divided into two parts. The defense portion was approved overwhelmingly by members of both parties, 361 to 69. The remaining piece had less support from Republicans, but were approved 260 to 171 with 1% vote. The 2,741-page government spending bill attempts to avert a shutdown as soon as this coming Friday evening. The bill now moves to the Senate, where leaders hope to approve it quickly, but they have a brief stopgap spending bill on deck if needed to avert a shutdown. Overwhelming bipartisan support for getting the Ukraine money out the door quickly enough to be effective propelled agreement on the broader bill. Congress hasn't been able to enact a fulsome spending agreement since October 1st. But even the bipartisan greased accomplishment only so much. Democratic leaders scrambled Wednesday to quell an uprising from their own members over another portion of the bill that would have directed $15.6 billion to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, with additional vaccines and testing at home and abroad. At the demand of the Republicans, who are skeptical of more COVID-19 spending, the funding was redirected from unspent money previously sent to states. Rank and file Democrats protested the clawback, forcing Democrat leaders to delete the whole COVID-19 funding provision in order to get the bill approved. Underscoring the frantic negotiations played out in Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, Democrats held open a separate House vote on the floor, hours to eat up time so they could keep talking. Things are going exactly according to plan, House Rules Committee Chairman Jim McGovern, Democrat in Massachusetts, said sarcastically on the House floor as he withdrew the proposal measure on the original bill and announced that an altered bill would be introduced. Everything is beautiful in its own way. Democrats had earlier held the funding as necessary to protect against emerging COVID-19 variants. Pelosi, Democrat California, called the removal of this heartbreaking. I wonder if she felt it was heartbreaking when she was maskless getting her hair done in a salon when she told all of her constituents that you can't go in public unless you're wearing a mask. Doubtful. House Democrats hope to enact their own $15.6 billion COVID-19 relief measure. But given the GOP's reluctance to approve additional pandemic-related spending without offsets, a separate bill appears unlikely to be approved in the Senate. The House bill is partially paid for by returning unspent money to the Treasury. So if there's all this unspent money, billions, why do you want to come up with another bill and spend billions more on something that the states aren't using? It's things like that that just make absolutely no sense and make us look like idiots to the world. It does not rely on money from the states and local relief funds that prompted the controversy earlier during the day. What should be a slam dunk for Democrats, as the party of silence and public health has become yet another entrapment battle, and one that leaves the nation more vulnerable to future surges, Representative Jack and Costless, Democrat Massachusetts, said in a statement. Also causing consideration was the bill's amount of time lawmakers had to read it. The text came out early Wednesday with expectations of a midday vote. Not enough time to comb through nearly 2,500 pages of text and more than $1 billion in spending. Pelosi balked at questions about the brief timeline and the fact that even some Democrats are surprised at the COVID funding structure. Let's grow up about this, okay? She said in response to the question about the late night bill drop. We're in the legislative process. We have a deadline for keeping government open. We have a lively negotiation, and it has to be bipartisan. The bill is stocked with other measures, including the first use of congressional earmarks or money targeted at specific projects since 2011. Among its other policies is the reauthorization of the Violence Act against women, money for Biden's cancer moonshot to cure the disease, and a boost in Pell Grants for students. It also calls for a plaque to be placed on the west front of the Capitol honoring the police officers who responded to the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Democrats are relieved to see a 6.7% boost in domestic spending over the most recent spending agreements enacted under the Trump administration. Republicans countered with a 5.6% increase in defense spending. So these Democrats that are all up in arms right now and concerned that we haven't had a chance to read all of this bill, and we need more time. Do you all not remember during the Obama time when Joe Biden was the vice president, which is as close as he should have ever got to where he's at, when they passed the Obamacare bill and Republicans went, wait a minute, you just threw this several thousand-page bill at us, and we haven't had a chance to read it yet. How can we vote on it if we haven't read it? And Nancy Pelosi's words were, quote, we must pass the bill so that we know what's in the bill. You couldn't make this shit up if you tried. And you guys up in Washington, D.C. wonder why the American people are pissed off? Look in the mirror. Every damn one of you, Democrat or Republican. Yesterday, Joe Biden's administration warned that Russia may use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine after a top U.S. diplomat told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee this week that Ukraine has labs, hear this out, which the U.S. is working to keep out of Russian control. At the same time, Russian Foreign Minister spokeswoman Maria Zakharova accused Ukraine of operating chemical and biological weapon labs with the help of the United States. To be clear, this is preposterous, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, as reported also by Fox News. She argued that it is exactly the kind of disinformation operation we've seen repeatedly from the Russians over the years in Ukraine and in other countries around the world, which have been debunked conclusively, and an example of the type of false pretexts we have been warning the Russians would invent. Now, let me stop for just a second and say this much. Why would we need any kind of labs to conduct biological weapons training or anything of that nature, or chemical weapons training in another country when we do that right here in America? We have that ability here, and we do that here. And I'll leave it at that. But to think that we've got these labs that Russia propaganda is putting out in Ukraine, and that's what this is all about, is bullshit. Now, if they show me the lab and the reporters can go find it, I'll retract my statement that it's bullshit. But for right now, I agree with the administration that this is Russian propaganda. I also will tell you this much. I have 3 friends that I've known for many years that are on the ground over there right now. I get texts with them daily. One's a freelance journalist. The other 2 I serve with in the military. They're there helping support, along with thousands of other U.S. military personnel that are retired or that served and got out. They're there to help fight the Russian invasion. I've heard nothing like this, and I've asked them about this. And my friend that's a freelance journalist is actually looking into it to see, is there something there that our White House doesn't want us to know about? Or is it what I think it is, Russian propaganda? The press secretary assured reporters that the United States is in full compliance with its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention and the Biological Weapons Convention that does not develop or process such weapons anywhere. That part of the story is not true. It's Russia that has a long and well-documented track record of using chemical weapons, including an attempted assassination and poisoning of Putin's political enemies like Alexei Navalny. She continued, it's Russia that continues to support the Assad regime in Syria, which has repeatedly used chemical weapons. It's Russia that has long maintained a biological weapons program in violation of international law. Additionally, she highlighted Russia's track record of accusing the West of the very violations that Russia itself is participating in. This is all an obvious ploy by Russia to try to justify its further premeditated, unprovoked, and unjustified attack on Ukraine. Now that Russia has made these false claims and China has seemingly endorsed this propaganda, we should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, or to create a false flag operation using them. One day earlier, Undersecretary of State of Political Affairs Victoria Nuland told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that Ukraine has biological research facilities that Russian forces want to control. Ukraine has biological research facilities, which in fact we are quite concerned Russian troops are, Russian forces are, may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach, she said. Answering a question from Senator Marco Rubio, Republican Florida, about the existence of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, Nuland said that any chemical or biological attack in Ukraine will undoubtedly come from Russia, adding that it's a classic Russian technique to blame the other guy what they're planning to do themselves. So, yes, the administration is doing the same thing that CNN does and MSNBC does, and so does Fox News these days. Spin stories and not be truthful, and there is so much mixed information coming out that it's hard to grasp where the truth really lies, other than sitting back and listening to all sides like I do, and my own personal experience of training for chemical warfare. I'll believe it when I see it. The United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense said yesterday that their Russian counterparts have confirmed the use of a rocket launcher that fires brutal thermobaric munitions in Ukraine. UK Minister of Defense tweeted the Russian MOD has confirmed the use of a TOS-1A weapon system in Ukraine. The TOS-1A uses a thermobaric rocket, creating incendiary and blast effects. The UK MOD also shared a video with pre-existing footage of Russian multiple launch rocket systems in use. Their thermobaric weapons are particularly controversial because of how they deliver damage. The munitions create a mix of fuel and oxygen that creates a blast effect that lasts longer than conventional explosives. According to the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, these thermobaric explosives create a powerful pressure wave that causes a refraction or vacuum effect. This vacuum effect has led to some referring to thermobaric weapons as vacuum bombs. The UK's Ministry of Defense said TOS-1A's thermobaric munitions have a devastating effect and can destroy infrastructure and cause significant damage to internal organs or flash burns, resulting in death to those exposed. Thermobaric weapons have been used by a number of countries, including Russia, the UK, the US. The GBU-42-B, also known as the mother of all bombs, is a thermobaric bomb that is considered the most powerful non-nuclear weapon in the US arsenal. The use of this munition has been rumored throughout the last 2 weeks of Russian invasion of Ukraine. Some users on social media speculate that a particular large blast near one of the Ukrainian cities was caused by one such weapon. Last week, when asked about Russia's alleged use of so-called vacuum bombs, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, I don't think any confirmation of that. I haven't seen any confirmation of that. We have seen the reports. If they were true, it would be a potential war crime. Now, let me stop right there and say that if you're saying using that as a war crime, then is it not a war crime when the United States used it in Afghanistan? We did. You can watch the video right here on YouTube. White House announced it. We dropped one, the mother of all bombs, and took out a shit ton of terrorists. So does that make it a war crime? I'm not saying that Russia should be using this. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, Russia should mind their own damn business and back the fuck out of Ukraine and stop this silliness. And they should be held accountable for the way they're conducting themselves right now, which we'll go further into here shortly, which is barbaric. Well, the UK's MOD report that the Russians confirm the use of the thermobaric weapon, the U.S. Department of Defense has not yet shared that assessment. During a Wednesday's press briefing, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, that's one stupid son of a bitch, was asked about Russia's alleged use of such weapons and replied, no indication that a thermobaric weapon, no evidence of that I can speak to. While the U.S. Department of Defense has not confirmed Russia's use of this weapon, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she discussed the issue with the Ukrainian president on a Wednesday phone call. We talked about weapons that Putin is using, weapons prohibited in the Geneva Convention. Just so you know, Nancy, because I guess you don't, Russia doesn't give two shits about the Geneva Convention. Neither does China, which would be the next thing we're going to be dealing with Taiwan. Neither does North Korea. Neither does Iran. In fact, we're the only people that actually abide by it. These weapons are prohibited, including cluster bombs and vacuum bombs, which cause severe suffering, Pelosi told reporters. Yet, we used it. We used this weapon in Afghanistan. And I'm glad we did, because they attacked us on 9/11. All right? It is what it is. Geneva Convention, which actually consists of 4 treaties and 3 protocols, does not specifically ban thermobaric weapons. However, the conventions do constrain the use of force in war times. So what is it, Jen, White House Press Secretary? Is it a war crime or is it not a war crime? Did they use it? Did they not use it? Somebody in Washington, D.C., please make up my mind. The Convention of Certain Conventional Weapons also does not specify a ban on thermobaric weapons, but does seek the prohibiting of weapons which may be deemed to be excessively injurious or to have indiscriminate effects. Human Rights Watch is one particular group that has argued that these particular bombs could be considered banned weapons, especially when used near highly populated civilian areas. No shit. The organization told Fox News that the thermobaric bombs are prone to indiscriminate use due to their large blast radius. In urban settings, it is very difficult to limit the effect of enhanced blast weapons to combatants, Human Rights Watch added, and the nature of enhanced blast weapons make it virtually impossible for civilians to take shelter from their destructive effects, which is true. You're not hiding from it. Just like you're not going to hide from a nuclear bomb. It's not going to happen. So when the White House put out 2 weeks ago that in the event of a nuclear bomb, Make sure that you wear your mask and social distance from other people in your shelter so that you don't get COVID-19. And if you do get COVID-19, call 911 and let them know. There won't be a 911 to call if a nuclear bomb goes off. But that's the kind of people that are leading our country right now. Republican senators are blasting the Biden administration's refusal to provide combat aircraft to Ukraine. And we've talked about that on Tuesday night show. Expressing skepticism over the claim that such a move would escalate tensions between the U.S. and Russia. Several members of the Senate Intelligence Committee called out the administration during a Thursday hearing today, unsatisfied with what intelligence officials were saying. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican, Arkansas, noted that according to U.S. intelligence in January, Russia did not want a direct conflict with the United States. Cotton doubted that this would have changed, considering the Russian military's struggling invasion of Ukraine. You think they're more likely to want a conflict now, after Vladimir Putin has seen the performance of his army? Cotton asked Director of National Intelligence, Arvel Hines. You think they're more likely to want a piece of us now that they're 2 months into this? Hines said it was not a question of Russia wanting a conflict, but perceiving the U.S. as being in that conflict. Cotton was not convinced, arguing that it appears that Putin's deterred the Biden administration by claiming that transporting aircraft would be an escalation. So, just so we all understand this, all right? We don't want Ukraine to be able to get the fighter jets that Poland is willing to give them in exchange for us giving them an upgrade to be able to get F-16s, which can come from Davis Monthan. We have them there. We can get them ready to fly in a matter of weeks. If we do that, that escalates it, and then Russia will strike us with a nuclear weapon. That's their thinking. But yet, we can send Stinger missiles over there and all types of arms to shoot down their helicopters and airplanes and blow up their tanks, and that doesn't escalate anything. Does this sound batshit crazy to you? It does me. It doesn't matter, folks. You're sending them weapons to defeat the Russian military, regardless if it's a Stinger missile to shoot down one of their jets, or another country giving them. And here's the other thing. What do we have to do with that? What does America have to do with what Poland does? Since when does America have to approve another country's donating military hardware to a country to fight a war? How in the hell did that come into our hands? Bypass us, for crying out loud. Poland, talk to the Ukrainian president. He will send pilots that know how to fly the MiG-29 to your country to get them and fly them to his country, arm them with weapons, and go attack these son of a bitches. It's that simple. And now all of a sudden, it's got to go through America to get approval? No, it doesn't. Oh boy. And if that's going to be our position, we might as well call the commanding general at Fort Lewis outside of Seattle and tell him to take the flag down and surrender our position, Cotton said, poising that Putin will not stop in Ukraine or even Europe, but will go all the way to the west coast of the United States of America. if the U.S. backs off every time he issues a threat to use nuclear weapons. Cotton has asked for the new information that would support the administration's position, but given the sensitivity nature of the information, Hines offered written material instead. Senator Ben Sasse, Republican Nebraska, shared Cotton's skepticism and opted to keep his question for a closed session where the witness could speak more freely. He did weigh in on the matter, however, after calling Cotton's question the most significant part of this hearing so far. Vladimir Putin will embrace the idea that we might self-deter every time he issues a press release. And it's hair-splitting about providing this kind of weaponry is not escalating, but providing the kind of weaponry is escalating, the other type. I don't think we really believe that, he said. I think the administration is pushing the intelligence community to give them cover for leaning forward decisions they don't want to be making, said Senator Richard Burr, Republican North Carolina, also took a cue from Cotton and questioned the logistics or logic behind the administration's decision making. Burr noted that both the U.S. and Poland are part of NATO. So it's curious that the U.S. would give Poland a green light to transfer aircraft to Ukraine, but changes their mind when the planes are coming from American area. I draw this conclusion. This is a political decision, Barr said, noting that intelligence and policies are theoretically and typically kept separate. My hope is that we haven't, as an intelligence community, put our finger on the scale of a political decision that's been made, Burr said. In response, Haynes said he does not believe there is any policy pressure being put on intelligence analysts. Well, that's because you're clueless. This whole fucking thing is political. I mean, that and a bunch of spineless bastards running Washington, D.C. Because Russia threatened something, all of a sudden, we're bowing down to them? Wait a minute. These same people, when Trump was in office, wanted us to wipe Russia off the face of the earth. And now all of a sudden, oh my God, no, no, no. You know, look, it's this simple. There ain't a single living thing on planet Earth that is allowed to stay here indefinite. Nothing. Zero. To include you and me. Our days are numbered. Whether it's going to be a car accident, a heart attack, a disease, basic incident, a shooting, a stabbing. When it's your time to go, you're checking out of here. That's a fact. It's a fact that we can't stay here. And to leave, sadly, we must die. But if you believe in God and you have faith, then you move on to something bigger and better. If you're an atheist, then maybe you should be really scared. The first high-level talks between Ukraine and Moscow failed to make progress on humanitarian corridors for civilians or a possible ceasefire as global anger grew over a Russian attack on a maternity hospital near the capital of Ukraine. Officials say killed at least 3 people, including a child, but they're still digging out through the rubble, and they know there's a whole bunch of people missing, to include children. Russia refuses to commit a halt in the war so aid could reach hundreds of thousands of civilians, including main humanitarian priorities, evacuating people trapped, where daily missions to rescue non-combatants have failed for almost a week. Ukraine president has accused Russia of committing a war crime with the attack on the medical facility, which underscored U.S. warnings that the biggest assault on a European state since World War II could become increasingly attritional as Russia encounters stronger than expected resistance from Ukrainian forces. The White House has condemned the attack as a barbaric use of force against civilians, while British Prime Minister Boris Johnson called it deprived. A definite Levin showed no signs of making any concessions, repeating to reporters that he put forward Russia's demands at the meeting that Ukraine be disarmed and accept neutral status. I want to repeat that Ukraine has not surrendered, does not surrender, and will not surrender, he told reporters at the meeting in Turkey. We are ready for diplomacy. We are looking for diplomacy solutions. But while they do not exist, we will selflessly defend our land, our people from Russian aggression, he added. Despite the call for a humanitarian corridor, City Council reported more Russian shelling on March 10th. Bombs are hitting houses now, grocery stores, and as we know, children's hospital. It said that 1,200 inhabitants have been killed during the Russian siege. The Red Cross has said more than 40 or 400,000 people are trapped without humanitarian aid and evacuation corridors, facing apocalyptic conditions. Because every time they've agreed to have a certain area where they will not bomb to allow innocent men, women, and children to get out of Ukraine so they don't get killed, Russia goes and attacks that roadway and kills them. It's barbaric on a level that we haven't seen since Hitler. The Kremlin said it would look into the attack on the hospital, but claimed that the medical facility is a strategic Black Sea port, had been serving as a military base for nationalists, in clear contradiction to Kremlin spokesman's statement hours earlier that we don't have clear information about what happened there. The hospital attack was not the only one targeted at a medical facility. In another city in Ukraine, 260,000, some 150 kilometers west, bombs fell onto two hospitals, one of them a children's hospital. The mayor of that town said on Facebook, he said there were no injuries reported. The World Health Organization says it has documented 18 attacks on medical facilities since the start of this unprovoked invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian citizens are desperately trying to leave areas under Russian bombardment, which does not seem to be decreasing despite intensive diplomacy and more Western sanctions against Moscow. Civilians resume leaving Ukraine city of Sumy for a third day through Ukrainian humanitarian corridor on March 10th, following an agreement on a local ceasefire. The regional governor said several thousand people have left Sumy this week under agreements with Russia. People have also leaving nearby settlements and towns throughout the area. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is continuing to hold her talks on the Russian invasion in Warsaw with the Polish leadership on March 10th. Here's a test. Get Camilla back here. Put her in a room. Put a map up of Europe with no names of the cities, states, countries. And ask her to point out where Ukraine is. Just have her point on the map. I guarantee you she can't even get close. The UNHCR estimated on March 9th that the figure has now reached somewhere between 2.2 million people, most of them crossing to neighboring Poland, where the border guard service has some 1.43 million Ukrainians arrived as of March 10th. The European Union continued to tighten sanctions on those implicated in the Russian aggression in Ukraine, agreeing on new measures targeting another 14 oligarchs, 146 members of the Russian's upper house of parliament, and their families. The 27-member bloc is due to hold a summit in France on March 10th. That's today. They're actually holding that right now because it's nighttime here, to discuss the Ukrainian invasion and energy crisis triggered all across Europe. Let's step away from Ukraine and talk about something that, or someone that I've done many videos on. It is no secret that I have a dislike for Representative Ilhan Omar. I feel that she has no business anywhere near our Congress because she's an ungrateful bitch for the fact that we rescued her and her family and thinks that we're just a horrible, disgusting country. A U.S. Army veteran and Somali refugee vowed on Wednesday to unseat Representative Ilhan Omar during this coming midterm elections. She said, "I'll do it one vote at a time." Ilhan Omar will not be reelected to Congress this year, she tweeted. She is a congressional candidate. Her name I can't even pronounce. It's Shukri, and the last name is Abdiraham. She said, "I'm a 10-year U.S. Army combat veteran, and I will be replacing her." In response to another tweet, a user doubted her ability to beat Omar. She said in the community daily and win one vote at a time. In an interview with Fox News last month, she said she believes in a well-funded police force. Wow, she's a Democrat. Securing America's borders. Holy shit. She's a Democrat. And preserving the American dream that she found after escaping the regime in Somalia. I have never forgotten and never will forget what America gave to me. I took an oath when I became a citizen, and I took an oath when I joined the United States Armed Forces. Those oaths I took both ended in "so help me God," and neither of them expire, she tweeted in February. She's a mother of 3. She announced her candidacy earlier this year, telling Fox and Friends First host Todd Pryor that Representative Omar's far-left goals are upsetting to see. Yes, they are. "I gave my life to this country for 10 and a half years. I put my life on the line for the ideals of America, the America that I got to go to, the America that I am proud to put my life on the line for. And I came here legally as a refugee," she said, adding that she spent years in the slum of Kenya while being vetted to immigrate to the United States legally. In other words, she didn't marry her brother. Now you have open borders, and we don't know who's crossing. No one is getting vetted, she said. Let me remind you, she's a Democrat. We don't know how dangerous these people are to our livelihoods. I don't believe that vetting is racist. That's right. She's a Democrat. I don't believe securing our borders is racist. This is Democrats saying this, folks. All our politicians, government leaders have a responsibility to protect our sovereignty, nation, and our people. Last week, she posted a political advertisement on Twitter highlighting her difficult years in Somalia and how her life has led her to run for Congress. Alihan Omar was given a second chance when America took her in, but chose to ridicule the very country that saved her life. When I was welcomed as a legal American citizen, she tweeted, I responded by joining the U.S. Army. Now I'm taking a stand to give hope to the people of Minneapolis. I will figure out what your actual name is, how to pronounce it. And once I do that, I will be doing more stories about you. Because right now, from what I have gathered and what I've heard, I like. Because you're a rare breed as a Democrat if these are the things that you believe in when it comes to our country. For those of you that don't know, I used to be a Democrat, born and raised a staunch Democrat here in the South. And then when I went into the military in 1985 and realized that the Democrats didn't give two shits about the military or its veterans, and then that the Democrat Party was being hijacked by the far left and the liberals, I left it. It's not the same party that it used to be, although it's still racist. And the last thing I want to share with you tonight, MSNBC, a liberal, a Democrat economic analyst and former Obama advisor, Stephen Rettner. Now, I'm going to repeat that because this is very important, and it should show you the hope that I have for midterms. MSNBC, the most liberal far-left outlet out there, Democrat economic analyst and former Barack Obama advisor, Stephen Rettner, took President Biden to task today for claiming that Russian President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine is responsible for the soaring inflation Americans are facing at home. Biden reacted to the staggering consumer price index report from the Labor Department in a statement today, where he attempted to blame Putin. That's right, he's blaming Russia for the documented 7.9% spike in consumer prices over the last 12 months. Today's inflation report is a reminder that America's budgets are being stretched by price increases, and families are starting to feel the impacts of Putin's price hikes. The statement said a large contributor to inflation this month was an increase in gas and energy prices as markets reacted to Putin's aggressive actions. As I have said from the start, there will be cost at home as we impose crippling sanctions in response to Putin's unprovoked war. But Americans can know this: the costs we are imposing on Putin and his cronies are far more devastating than the costs we are facing. That's from Biden. Rettner called out Biden's remarks in a tweet Thursday today, noting that the administration's sanctions on Russia, which were imposed last month, would account for only a small percentage of the devastating inflation figures that reflects the past 12 months. Well, no. These are February numbers and only include small Russian effect. Rettner wrote, this is Biden's inflation, and he needs to own it. The price increase, which marks the sharpest spike since 1982, reflects the 12 months ending in February and didn't include the oil and gas price surge that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine at the end of February, the Associated Press reported. Since then, average gas prices nationally have jumped about 62 cents a gallon to $4.32, according to AAA. And in some locations, such as Mono, California, they're paying $6.40 a gallon tonight. Ratner previously criticized Biden on the issue after he blamed the supply chain crisis for the rise in inflation last month. In a scathing New York Times opinion column, Ratner said Biden's effort to deflect blame for a crisis of his doing was dishonest and simply misleading. Blaming inflation on supply lines is like complaining about your sweater keeping you too warm after you've added several logs to the fireplace, he wrote at the time. I agree. Folks, being a little serious with you, what's happening right now in the world is some scary shit. I don't want to use scare tactics because I don't know what to tell you to do. There's not much you can do other than come midterms, vote. And we get rid of this incompetent leadership that we have right now in hopes that the new people we put in power will not be as incompetent as the ones in the past when the Republicans had 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the House, and the Senate and didn't do shit. And people like me, and hopefully you, will hold our elected members to Congress accountable for their actions and call them out. Regardless if you're calling out your own party, if somebody we send to Washington, D.C. to represent we the people is not representing we the people and they're doing stupid ass shit and just up there for their own personal benefit, then damn it, you need to call them out on it. You need to call their office. Tell them your displeasure. Email them your displeasure. Contact them on social media. Share your displeasure peacefully and let them know this isn't okay. Right now, we have the Soviet Union, Russia, with a crazy dictator who is wanting to rule the world, starting with Ukraine. And if you think he's stopping there, well, you don't know anything about what's happening because he's not going to. And now threatening nuclear war. You know, the last time we were this close to a nuclear war, a World War III scenario, the last time was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Many of you may not know anything about that because of your age. Look it up. John F. Kennedy, Democrat president. This is back when the Democrat Party wasn't a bunch of spineless little bitches. And he tried diplomacy. He tried everything he could. And then he finally said, enough's enough. And he gave them a set period of hours to remove your missiles from Cuba or we're taking you the fuck out. He called their bluff. And what happened? It took a strong leader with a backbone to stand up to these crazy, horrible dictators and say, not on my watch. And right now, we don't have that. Nowhere in the administration do we have that at all. Now, we have diversity there. We have transvestites there. We have people that hate America there. We have members of Congress that say horrible things about us and veterans and the military. We don't have leadership. We don't have real strong leadership. And that's what we need. We need somebody that says, look, this may be the end of the world, but damn it, I'm not going to sit back and watch you destroy an innocent country. Just imagine you're sitting on your front porch, sipping your coffee one morning, or if you're a liberal, I don't know, you're sitting there eating Tide Pods. And across the street, your neighbor, little old lady, she's in her 80s, walks out with her cane to go to the mailbox to check her mail. 5 or 6 young punks, Antifa members, let's say, just run up to her and start pounding the shit out of her, throwing her on the ground, busting out her teeth, bruising her all up. What are you going to do? Sit there and watch? Going to call 911? You're going to run over there and get involved? Or are you going to sit back and do nothing? Maybe go inside and get a can of mace and throw it across the street and hope she gets it. Well, that little old lady is Ukraine. And those thugs beating her up, that's Russia. When good men do nothing, evil grows, expands, and it takes over everything. We cannot allow women and children to be killed, innocent people killed by this horrible regime in Russia. We cannot sit back and watch them attack hospitals and grocery stores and people trying to flee and bombing housing developments. We can't do that. And John Kirby, shame on you. You are one of the most un-American pieces of shit I think I've ever heard of. And you're clueless. I want to hope, I want to believe that the Joint Chiefs of Staff aren't as clueless as you are, and that they're giving proper information to the Biden administration and they're just turning them down because they're a bunch of pussies. That's what I want to believe. But we've already seen from some of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that they're spineless too. So I don't know. I don't know if we will have it tomorrow. I don't know if I make it to midterms. But I can assure you this much. If things don't turn around really soon, there won't be a Douglas Ducote show or Sean Hannity show or anything. It'll be all over with. Because we're bowing down to somebody as evil as Hitler was. And it shouldn't be no surprise, because the leader that's doing that is the same leader that surrendered us in Afghanistan to the people that attacked us on 9/11, and then aided and abetted the same enemy by leaving behind billions of dollars worth of military equipment. So why our own CIA and FBI and Secret Service don't remove him from office, I don't know. But they need to wake the fuck up and look at what's going on and look at history and realize that tomorrow, in a split second, a blink of an eye, we could all be evaporated off the planet because one leader is an old senile fool and the other one is crazier than Adolf Hitler was. Think about it. If you haven't already done so, please go to DouglasDucote.com, check out the website, check out the other social media platforms I'm on, follow me there. Description in the video below when this becomes a regular video and the live show is over with. Went a little bit long, a little bit past the 9 o'clock hour, but had a lot of things to get off my mind. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military. Many of them are in harm's way as we speak. Our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders and their families, our Angel families, our Blue and Gold Star families, and our country. May God bless the United States of America and planet Earth. Thank you, and God willing, I'll see you all next Tuesday. Same bat station, same bat time. Good night, everyone, and God bless.